You're listening to 10 Points, a podcast with your hosts, Ash and Nicholas, where all the talk is Canadian Highlander, our favorite format from the best trading card game ever, Magic the Gathering.
Hey guys, it's me, Nicholas.
And me, Ash.
We know that over COVID, many people haven't been able to play as much Magic, especially Canadian Highlander, as they would have liked to. So today we're going to go over our subjective individual lists of our favorite top 20 cards that we think made the biggest splash in the format since the start of 2020.
But first, as always, we want to talk to you about our favorite cards, or I guess the best cards from the Dark. So, Nick, I know this set wasn't stellar for Highlander, but what's your best card for Highlander out of it?
I don't think this surprises anyone, but I picked Blood Moon. It keeps the format in check, keeps people honest about their mana bases, and it's just really strong.
Actually, yeah, pretty surprising to everyone. I also went with Blood Moon. We were kind of joking before this recording. There were only like 4 even potentially viable options in this set. So, we're not really surprised that Blood Moon took the cake.
As much as I love Maze of Ith, I definitely don't think that it is anywhere near Blood Moon in power level.
Yep, alright, so you guys actually get to hear about 21 cards from each of us.
Oh, yeah, I guess Blood Moon does make it 21.
Alright, so do you want to explain a little bit about our thought process here on these lists before we get into it?
Yeah, obviously there are a lot of cards in these sets, so first of all, we're sure we missed some cards, or maybe, like, pick something over something else that a lot of people disagree with. These aren't necessarily the cards that, like, changed the format the most, but just the cards that we think are most played and, like, the strongest cards that have kind of become auto-includes in certain decks. Obviously this list is subjective, so if you disagree with us, sorry. We're probably wrong, but who knows?
Yeah, and additionally, we did try to order these, but for the most part, I would say after around the 4th or 5th place, it's kind of all, like, blurs together. It's hard to really select a perfect order for them.
Yeah, they're, like, loosely ordered, but I wouldn't put too much stock in the order that we have them in.
I'm pretty confident with my number 1.
Yeah, me too. I guess we haven't seen each other's lists yet, just
yes.
to be clear, so we don't actually know what the other person's number 1 is, but I'm excited to find out.
So, you want to start with me or you?
I'll start, and we're going to start from 20 going up to number 1.
Otherwise, it would not be dramatic at all.
Exactly. So for my 20th, I have the new Manland cycle.
From AFR?
Yeah. I think that they're pretty good and see a pretty decent amount of play, but I don't think that they've changed the format too much.
I think they were my 23.
Oh, really?
So they didn't quite make my list. They show up quite a bit, especially the red and green ones. But yeah, I agree. They show up, but they're not as insane as some of the other stuff we got. My number 20 is Prismari Command from Strixhaven. I think that's the only card I have from Strixhaven.
I was in and out on that card, but that was probably my, like, 22 or 23 as well.
So I got by it the other day, and also I found out that depending on what deck you're playing, you can legitimately use the Prismari commands to help you remove a Magus the Moon or a Blood Moon by getting the treasure for the actual color of mana you need. And it's probably your, like, Ingest guy or Grixis or something, but that's not really the point.
Yeah, which, I mean, if you can cast Prismari Command, you don't need the treasure, or at least for a Magus.
I mean, you have one, well, yeah, for a Magus. What if there's a Magus with, like, a freaking, I don't know, sword on it?
Well, then
you're probably screwed.
Yeah. Anyway, so we're going to my number 19. As number 19, I have Kroxa, Titan of Death's Hunger. I think the card's really strong. I think that Escape is a broken mechanic, but I don't think that it's change the format too much, except for some of the mid-range and kind of aggro decks have gotten another toy.
Yeah, it is a good one. My number 19 is Memory Deluge out of Midnight Hunt. Oh, by the way, what you guys say what set your Crocs is from?
Yeah, I have no clue.
Is this from Theros Beyond Death?
I am absolutely not going to be paying attention to what set they're from, because I did not write any of those down.
I'll tell you what set stuff is from.
Alright.
Okay, you're 18.
My 18 is Fateful Absence. We talked about this card in our previous episode. I think it's really nice for white to have another way to deal with planeswalkers, and it's just an efficient piece of removal.
Yeah, the fact that it kills planeswalkers is it didn't kill planeswalkers, it wouldn't see play, I don't think.
Oh yeah, for sure.
That is just hugely relevant. My number 18 is Grist. I didn't write his full name down. I don't remember what he's called. But the fact, the way that he works, makes him so impossible to deal with all the time. Because if I had $1 for every time that I had a veto or a negate in hand and I could not counter it, and then I had a Source of Plashers and I couldn't kill it.
Yeah, Grist, every time I'll duress my opponent and be like, oh, cool, I'll Grist. It's nope.
No, you won't.
Sure won't.
But yeah, it also just is pretty good at removing stuff. It's become a mainstay in pretty much every green-black deck.
My 17 is Prismatic Ending from Modern Horizons 2. We also talked about this in the previous episode. And similar to Fateful Absence, it's another way for white to deal with certain permanents, but it's also just really good in any 3-color, 4-color mid-range deck that's playing white.
You put that at 17?
Yeah, I mean, it's good, but it's not altering the format.
Oh, I disagree. Alright. Well, my 17 is Cling to Dust. I think that card's been really, really good. And, Nicholas was just saying, Escape is a strong mechanic. This card is very versatile and it's very easy to replace itself if you don't need its graveyard hit effect, but also it can be very useful later. If I had $1 for, I know I keep saying that, if I had $1, but it comes up so often that I will either see someone else do this or I'll do it myself, where my opponent will cling something early and I'm yeah, sure, you're cycling, whatever, and then 7 turns later I'm Snapcaster Mage, and they're flashback can clean to us, and I'm oh.
I wish that card said flashback. It says escape.
Yeah, well, yeah, even
Yeah.
more than a state. They get to keep using it. It's good. Point is, I like Cling to Dust. All right, what's your 16?
My 16 is Yavimaya, Cradle of Growth from Modern Horizons 2. It just makes your mana base a little bit better in certain decks. It allows you to play more Pain lands and things like Maze of Ith and stuff. It's another Urborg.
It also works really well with Elvis Champion.
I'm not familiar with that card.
It gives elves Forest Walk.
Yeah.
Alright, so that one's good. But also, we talked about it in the last episode, but that's the reason that you play Water to Grave in Blue-White Control instead of Breeding Pool, because your Prismatic Ending is more likely to get help from a Yavimaya than an Urborg.
You think so?
In our current meta, anyway.
Yeah,
I think so.
That's true.
It could very easily swap, and then I would switch for Watery Grave. Or I would switch Breeding Pool for Watery Grave.
Yeah. What was your 16?
My number 16 is Esper Sentinel. And this one, I'm not going to lie, I think it might belong a little bit higher on the list. But I think right now there's just not a lot of decks that fit the archetypes that would want to be playing this in our meta, but pretty much every time I've seen it, it's been good. Granted, I usually play control style decks, so it's particularly good against me, but...
Yeah, no, that card has been very strong for really most white decks.
Yeah, I mean, I play it in Affinity.
Oh yeah, it's really good in there. That card's an artifact for some reason.
Yeah, the fact that it costs white mana is like, it's not negligible. It's kind of a big deal in Affinity, honestly, but
If that was colorless, then that would just be too, like, that'd be crazy. But going on to my number 15, we have Vivian, Monsters Advocate from, I think, is that? Ikoria, yep. Vivian's just, first of all, really good in, like, the, like, pod decks and, like, Bant, Blink, and stuff like that. But she's also just really good in a lot of decks. I think Chad is on it, and he kills people with it a lot.
I also forgot to say that Grist and Is Null from Modern Horizons 2, and Cling to Dust is from Theros Beyond Death. My number 15 is Vivian, Monsters Advocate. So, we have the same 15, yeah. Card's insane. It's actually just dumb. It comes into play and just upticks to kill your opponent pretty quickly, honestly. And down ticks to tutor.
Yeah, not to mention that minus is absurd. Yeah.
Yeah, it's broken. And it just draws you cards for free.
It's very strong.
It's very good. Alright, anyway, the one downside to playing it is you have to then find a way to, like, track your beasts and counters, but it's, you know, that's, it's a
minor detail.
Alright, you want to tell me your 14?
Yeah, my number 14 is Luminous Broodmoth from Ikoria. I love this card in Pod, but it's also just, like, really good in, like, fair creature-based, like Naya or decks like that. It just gives you so much resiliency, and once they kill your creatures, they just come back better.
I will say one, that was in my list as well, and I ended up cutting it, basically because, I mean, and this is an excuse you could use for a lot of cards, but what makes that card good is how it interacts with your other creatures, particularly with how it interacts with your other creatures being removed. So the odds of them using removal on your other creatures while it's in play is 0.
Yeah.
So it's just it's a lightning rod that doesn't do, like, it's a 4 mana 3-power flyer on its own.
I mean, it also is wrath protection.
That's true. I'll give you that.
But yeah, I can see where you're coming from.
But anyway, that's the only reason I cut it. My number 14 is Dalthy Voidwalker. They put Rest in Peace on a creature, except it's not Rest in Peace. It is, in fact, Leyline of the Void. So
that card is very good.
Card good. It also casts your spells for free. Casts their spells for free. And also can't be blocked. But it also can't block, but don't worry about it. I've had people twice now try and block my creature with their Voidwalker, and I'm like, read your card, friend.
And what set's that from?
That is from Modern Horizons 2.
Alright, on to my 13. I have Ignoble Hierarch, also from Modern Horizons 2. I may be a little biased because I love Jund midrange, but I got really excited when I saw that they printed Jund Noble Hierarch.
Yeah, it pretty much goes alongside Noble Hierarch no matter where it is.
Yeah, it just, like...
I think the only exception is actual Bant decks.
I mean, even then, if you're playing more than, like, 2 mana dorks, this is your 3rd mana dork, like, every time. Like, you're probably on birds first, but you are, like, Noble Hierarch birds and then this.
Yeah. So my number 13 is Ignoble Hierarch from
Wow.
Modern Horizons 2. I mean, like, there's a couple more cards coming up here that I'm like, there's no way these aren't on his list. So we're probably going to get some more that line up.
Yeah, I feel like this is more than I thought we'd get, like, on the same selection at the
same
left on the list until we get, like, up to, like, the first maybe, like, 4 or 5.
Yeah, but you put Prismatic Ending in 17, and I just can't agree with that. But one other thing about Ignoble Hierarch is it just added some more density that the, like, ramp decks needed, like the Hoof deck, other decks that wanted to go, like, straight to the 3-drop slot, but struggled with the right colors this can kind of allow, like joined aggro, for example. This can allow those decks to be a little more greedy with their pips that they weren't able to be before. Just a little bit, but every little thing helps.
Yeah, going on to my number 12, I have Fury from Modern Horizons 2. The entire cycle of evoke creatures from Modern Horizons 2 are just very strong. But Fury, it's just so good. Like, I wasn't super high on this card when it first came out. I thought it would see a little bit of play, but
we whiffed, dude. Let's just say it, we whiffed.
Yeah, it's really strong. It just kills creatures and then your opponent.
Hard agree. I will say, when we were evaluating it, I did miss the word divide, and I did miss the word
Planeswalkers.
Double strike.
Oh
no, double strike. I probably read them out loud, but I didn't understand that until like later someone cast it, and I was like, "Wait, what do you mean you're doing 1 to my Teferi and more to my creature?"
Yeah.
But that was a whole.
Yeah, I think
we talked about that on Ep06.
The fact that the damage is divided is very important. And then the Planeswalkers is really nice as well.
You know what? Maybe this isn't the one that I misread. I think I may have read it the right way before the set review, and then I just didn't think it was good. I can't remember. I know at one point I read it wrong. I just don't remember if it was before or after the set review.
I don't know.
Who's to say? Who knows?
What's your number 12?
My number 12 is Consider. Consider is out of Innistrad Midnight Hunt. It's just like Opt, but it surveils, and it is fire. Very good.
I'm gonna be honest, I didn't even consider for this list. No, that card is really good. I just kind of forgot about it.
Yeah, it's a very welcome option in pretty much every cantrip deck. There are very few cantrip decks where you would play this, or where you would play Opt over this. Basically, only the ones that you are playing a lot of tutors, but you are not wanting stuff in your graveyard, and I'm not even sure what deck that is. So, but it's a very welcome option. Usually it's going to be pretty high in the cantrip suite, honestly. Probably like number 5 or 6, as opposed to number like 8. Or like Opt probably gets down to like 6 or 7 now.
Yeah, for sure.
What's your 11?
Yeah, my 11 is Esper Sentinel. We already talked about this card, but yeah, no, it's just really strong. There's a lot of non-creature spells being thrown around in this format, so...
Especially early.
Yeah, it's just really good.
Okay. My number 11 is Eliminate. It has just been an extremely good option. This is from Core 21, I think. I'm actually not sure about that. It's just been very, very good. Yeah, it's Core 21. It's been very, very solid as a removal spell. It's usually like my second black removal spell in any given deck. It's just very solid. It has a lot of hits.
Yeah, especially like with now they've been printing a lot more 2 and 3 mana plane. Well, not as many 2, but a lot of 3 mana planeswalkers recently. So being able to hit like Oko or Renin 6 or like 3 mana Teferi.
Narset.
Yeah, Narset, Ashiok. It's just really good.
Let's see, so that was my 11. Look, we're halfway done.
Hey.
We're probably going to talk a little bit more about this back half, though.
Yeah,
to be fair.
Definitely. The better the cards get, the more we'll probably talk about them.
Okay, you want to talk about your 10?
Yeah, my number 10 is the Cycle of Triomes. They definitely don't go in every deck because they have to come in tapped, but the fact that they're fetchable and the ability to cycle them makes them really nice for mana fixing in certain decks. And you don't feel as bad about drawing them late because you can just cycle them away.
So my 10 is Endurance, the other incarnation that we kind of whiffed on. This one has really proven its mettle, I would say. It is really shown that it is a great option for not all but most green decks, I would say.
Yeah,
pretty much any green deck that isn't like hyper aggro, it's probably very, very viable in.
That incidental graveyard hate is just really strong.
Yeah, and it's also not even like, it's better than like the Scavenging Ooze kind of incidental graveyard hate a lot of the time. It's just like the completely nukes it.
Yeah, and the fact that it comes out of nowhere, is definitely really relevant against like the storm decks and stuff like that. Because with Scavenging Ooze, they can kind of play around it, tutor up a way to kill it, but with Endurance, if they don't know it's coming, it can really ruin their game.
Yeah. Especially, it's also good against the decks that it doesn't seem like it's good against, because almost every deck is Delving, or has a Threshold card, or something like that. Even Medium Red has a card with Spell Mastery in it.
Plus, just a flash 3/4 reach creature is just, for 3 mana, is really strong.
Yeah, so that one's great.
Alright.
You are at number 9.
Yeah, going on to my number 9 is Endurance. We just talked about this, so I don't think we need to cover it more, but it's really good.
Well, let's go to your number 8, because my number 9 is Fury.
Okay. My number 8, part of the same cycle, is Solitude. I think it's the best of the evoke creatures. It's just really, really strong. Especially, I really love it in like Banty TB or Pod, where you can kind of abuse bringing it back, but in most white like decks, it's just really good.
I would have to agree. It is very much it's almost an auto-include in any deck that can reasonably cast it. I wouldn't play it in most decks that you can't actually cast it for mana. Outside of maybe some fringe combo deck that plays enough white cards to want to pitch cast it. I don't really know what that deck would be though. But broadly speaking, it's very, very good. And the lifelink is extremely relevant in control, because that's one of my only ways to gain back life if someone pressures me too much early. My number 8 is Solitude. So I think we have 3 that match perfectly.
Yeah.
And like 2 that are like one off.
Yeah.
So, we might have to find something else to fill this episode with if it's too short. Maybe it's just a little like short bonus episode to get out there. Yeah, so you're number 7?
Yeah, my number 7 is Dam. We talked about this in the Blue-White Control deep dive, but Dam is just so strong. It's really good in black-white decks, but it's also just really good in white decks that are looking for another Wrath of God. And you can tutor with Spellseeker, so it's just like insane.
Yeah. My number, as far as Dam, I completely agree with all that. Obviously, it's been huge for Blue Eye Control, so I do recommend. But my number 7 is probably could be higher on the list. I'm not sure how I would change stuff, but this could be higher on the list. But it is Underworld Breach. Fun fact about Underworld Breach. This is from Theros Beyond Death. Fun fact, it was the fastest card from being spoiled to being pointed. Or maybe it was from being printed to being pointed. One of those two.
Yeah, from printing, I think.
Yeah. This card completely changed the game when it came to Storm and Highlander. It changed everything. And single-handedly made Storm decks, like every Storm deck went up a tier, I would say.
Yeah, for sure.
It is just absolutely insane. It is an essential part of every point spread, and Yawgmoth's Will lost value.
I mean, I wasn't even playing Yawgmoth's Will in my most recent iteration of Storm.
Well, it's cost too many points.
Yeah, it's just so hard to play both of them, and Underworld Breach is just better.
Yeah, I will say that it did homogenize Storm decks a little bit, but there are still at least 2 very different versions of Storm style decks you can play. One of which being Paradox or Eggs even, which plays pretty different than Paradox, honestly. And then another being a more spell-based Storm deck. And Paradox Storm decks don't play the Underworld Breach. So that's my 7.
Yeah, on to my 6. I have Urza's Saga. It is so strong. Like, it's everything about that card. Just is value for the small price of a land drop.
I have more words to say about Urza Saga if that's all you have to say.
Yeah. I assume it was
Yeah.
going to show up on your list too, so I didn't want to like talk about it too much.
It's late. It's higher on my list.
That's what I figured.
So, thing about Urza Saga, the opportunity cost is so extremely low, and the potential value from it is so extremely high that there are almost no decks where it's actively wrong to play it.
Yeah.
I actually forgot to add it to my list, but my
oh really?
No, not this list. When we were talking about Blue-White Control, and I wrote up a non-recall list, it was supposed to include an Urza Saga because it can get both top and Soul Ring.
Yeah.
Yes, precisely. I've gone on record saying that if you can hit 2 targets with it in a Highlander deck, it's probably good to play it. Because even if you don't need the card you're getting with it, you're usually putting 6 power into play.
Yeah.
Assuming you do that with it. And that's just extremely good. Not to mention if you're depending on what else, like what other kind of decks you're playing. If you're playing a creature deck, you can play a Shadow Spear. You can play if you're playing Affinity, you have like literally 20 hits with it.
Yeah.
I've seen it go and get top. I've seen it go and get Expedition Map.
It's just insane in medium red. You can get Soul Ring, you can get Mana Crypt, you can get like Skull Clamp if you're playing that. Maybe not in medium red, but a lot of like creature decks.
Yeah, Skull Clamp's a huge one. You do play that in medium red. You have a lot of stuff that makes tokens.
Yeah.
Another thing you can do in medium red is if you really need to get red mana, you can use it to get a Chrome Mox. It's usually bad, but you can do it. Basically, all I like to say, the card is insane. But it's a little further down my list. My number 6 is actually a card that warped the format more than Urza Saga, but then it got pointed to a point where it doesn't show up as much. And that card is Thassa's Oracle. If a lot of our listeners were present, but this episode is mostly for the people who weren't present for all this anyway. So I will explain that when Thassa's Oracle came out, we were all kind of like, okay, cool. And then we of course realized what happened, which if you don't know, it basically combos with Tainted Pact or Demonic Consultation for a 3 or 4 mana instant win combo. That is extremely easy to protect, and 2 of the other cards do stuff without comboing. They are just like decent tutors. So you could play it alongside other combos like Time Vault or Splinter Twin type stuff if you were doing that.
Yeah,
and it was just really, really, really good.
This like dominated our meta for a solid few months, and I'm pretty sure I played against a deck that was playing Time Vault and Thassa's Oracle, a deck that was playing Splinter Twin and Thassa's Oracle, a deck that was playing Doomsday and Thassa's Oracle,
Painter Servant
and Thassa's Oracle, and just dedicated just Thassa's Oracle. Like it was just so strong.
Because you could just put those cards in your deck for the total cost of 1 point. Well, 0 points at first.
Yeah.
And then 1 point when they pointed Tainted Pact again. It was just almost always incorrect to not play it if you were in blue-black. It was just correct to play them. Or if you were in like blue, it was almost always correct to splash black for it.
Yeah, it was so strong.
And everyone was sick of Oracle by the time it finally got pointed. And then we kind of talked about it got pointed a lot more than we expected it to, but it is now 7 points.
I want to say it's 6.
Either way, it's a huge number of points now. It's a huge number of points, and that's why it shows up a lot less commonly because you have to devote a lot more of your point spread to it. It's still good, though, is the thing. Like you can still build a very good deck with it. So that was my 6. It was a huge deal, and still comes up every now and then, but it's not too frequent that you see it now. I think a part of it is like, if we were going to go to like a big tournament, I think somebody would probably bring like Esper or Grixis Oracle. It's just that a lot of our local player base was so sick of it that no one even wants to touch it.
We got bored of that card real quick.
Yeah, I actually think I may have said this already, but I played an Oracle deck I think 3 times total, and even when was doing well with it, I was just like, this isn't even fun.
It's
like I'm not enjoying this.
I mean, now it's much more fair, but yeah, it was very oppressive.
There was a time where you could play in your points list Tainted Pact, Recall, and Dig Through Time. You could play all of those, and Oracle was no points, so you could play Oracle.
Yeah, it was terrible.
Someone did that. We lost a lot.
Yep. All right, we're on to the big top 5. I'm interested to see, you've already put some of the cards in my top 5 lower on your list, so I'm interested to see.
You've put 3 of my top 5 lower on your list. How many of mine?
So far only 2, but they are my top 2.
Okay. Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But we're gonna go on to my number 5, which is Ragavan. Is it Nimble Pilfer or something like that?
Yeah, number 5?
Yeah, it could be higher, but my top 3. Well, my top.
Listen.
All right, I'll discuss why I picked these in certain orders.
When you're driving the Ragavan, you understand why it should be this, why it's so strong. Like you think you're playing against it, dude. When you're casting Ragavan,
I agree, and I will go over why my top 3 are where they are when I get to them.
Fair.
But yeah, no, Ragavan is like super, super strong. I don't know why they printed that card. They could have removed any number of things from that card and it would still be super good. They could have taken away dash. They could have taken away that it makes a treasure. I don't know why they decided to add all of those words onto that card.
Yeah, it really suffers from and also syndrome.
Yep. It's like Questing Beast, where it's like, oh, it does this, that's really strong. Wait, and it does this? Wow, that's crazy. Oh, and it does this. Like, it's like...
And it's legendary?
Yeah, just like, take a few steps back, alright?
Oh, by the way, Questing Beast just got indirectly buffed. Well, not exactly, but like, because the fact that Questing Beast is legendary makes him better for the new channel lands that are coming out in Kamigawa.
Oh, yeah, that's true. I haven't even
thought
about
that's notable. That. Okay, so do you have any more words on Ragavan?
No, I assume we'll get to him on your list so we can talk about him a little more, maybe.
Yeah, my number 5 is Uro, Titan of Nature's Wrath. This card, and it kind of followed on the fact that after Oko was printed, which is a little outside of the scope of this episode, once Oko got printed, a lot of people bought blue and green stuff, so a lot of people had blue and green stuff already. So when Uro came out, everyone was kind of like, oh, I see. And then Uro kind of dominated our meta for a while. It was not that much at first because of the Thassa's Oracle thing. But there was a while where even before Oracle got like pointed into the ground, it was people kind of got sick of it, so people just like weren't playing it for a few weeks, and there was a lot of fair stuff going around, and those fair cards were surrounding Uro, which is not a fair card, but disguises itself as a fair card when you look at it next to a Thassa's Oracle. But it's just extremely good. We talked a little bit about Escape earlier with Croxa and Clean the Dust, but this one's the better one.
Yeah, Uro is like absolutely absurd. It's just so resilient and it just like generates so much value. Like even just casting it for 3 and it sacrificing itself, it's still like pretty strong because you gain that 3 life, so it doesn't set you back too much. But once like if you get this late game, your opponent just has to find a way to deal with your graveyard because this just keeps coming back and drawing more cards and making more land drops and gaining more life. And then if it ever attacks, like, it just feels so demoralizing.
Yep. Very, very much so.
Which, going on to my number 4, I did have Uro. While I think Ragavan's really, really strong, you can kill a Ragavan. You can't really kill an Uro without exiling it or just getting rid of a graveyard or something. So that's why I put it higher than Ragavan.
I can agree with that. Yeah, I guess they probably should have made Ragavan able to like make stuff not block too.
Yeah.
My number 4 is Prismatic Ending, which we talked a little bit about earlier. We talked a lot about it in the last episode. How it's very, very good for blue-white control. It's another way to deal with planeswalkers and like coercive portal effects, stuff like these more like hard to answer threats that are good against blue-white control. Like Klothys as well.
Which I wouldn't even say that's really where it shines. Like, I think it's like fine in blue-white control, but it's definitely not like a requirement in there. But it's just really strong in like any deck that can reasonably cast it for 3 or more. It's just like a really strong, or any deck that's looking for removal that can cast it for 3 or more. It's really strong.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's very versatile. They just particularly in blue-white control, like blue-white control needed more of those effects, and then it got 2 in a pretty short amount of time.
Yeah, for sure.
Which I think made the deck a lot better. I will say I did have an awkward situation where I was going to cascade into a Prismatic Ending, which can only exile a 0-drop.
Yep.
But hey, you know, there are Barrel Age running around, so maybe it's not that bad. Yeah, so that was my number 4, was Prismatic Ending. I recommended the irregular one, not the Old Border one, because the Old Border one doesn't look that good. Don't tweet me.
I don't know if I've actually seen it.
What's your number 3?
Alright, so my number 3, I don't know if this will even be on your list, but my number 3 was Conspicuous Snoop.
It actually almost was.
Picked this. Okay, I picked this because it like completely bumped the Goblin deck up like an entire tier. The fact that the Goblin deck just now has a 1-card combo, mini card combo, but they play 1 card and then they get the combo. It just adds like a whole new layer of things that you have to play around when you're playing against the Goblins deck. So I think with my top 3, I kind of picked the things that like altered the format the most. Or altered the decks that they go in the most, and I think that this altered the Goblin deck a lot. Yeah. So that's why it made my top 3.
So that was your number 2?
3.
Number 3?
3.
My number 3 is Ragavan, Nimble Pilfer.
Yep.
I think we talked about him pretty well. Yeah, he kind of dummy though.
For sure.
I wonder if maybe it would have been better to be like reading these cards out loud.
What do you
It's probably fine.
Oh.
It's probably fine.
Yeah, if you don't know what any of the cards do, you can look them up.
We can put a little. I'll put a little deck list in the description that is just a list of all these cards, so that you can get them visually that way.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
So just after this, you need to message me your list.
Okay, I will. All right, my number 2. Sticking with the same theme of things that altered the format, which is why Ragavan and Uro were 4 and 5. I have Thassa's Oracle, just because it it created a whole new deck in the format. So I think if you're looking for notable cards that came out since COVID, I'd say the one that created an entirely new deck is pretty high up there.
That tracks, yeah.
So that's why I have Thassa's Oracle number 2.
Yeah, I already know what your number 1 is.
Yes, you do.
It's funny because that was my 7 and 6, which were your 2 and 1.
1 and 2.
So my number 2 is Urza Saga. We already talked about this briefly, but just the fact that I'm considering putting it into my recall build of blue-white control to get a Retrofitter Foundry is an issue. Which I do want to try that though. But the fact that Urza Saga is just good in blue-white control is just, that's a problem for me.
Yeah, Urza Saga is extremely strong.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and then your number 1 is?
My number 1 is Underworld Breach. Sticking with the same theme. This, first of all, it completely altered the way that Storm is played. And I would go so far as to say it created a whole new deck. Yawgmoth's Will Storm is like completely different from Underworld Breach Storm. And before Breach was 2 points, I was playing both of them in the same deck. But now that they're both 2 points, I think you just pick Underworld Breach over Yawgmoth's and just go all in on that plan. And I think that it's just better than Yawgmoth's Storm.
Yeah. It's definitely less fragile as well.
Yes.
Yeah, and then my number one, this is just the one that I think has been overall very influential in the format, both from a just deck consistency standpoint and to an extent a budget that improves what decks you can build on budgets. I put number one as the Triumph cycle from Ikoria. I just think I just think they have, out of everything here, have probably had the biggest effect in the format. I consider Thassa's Oracle's effect to have been somewhat temporary, which I know is kind of weird, seeing as I just said that you could still definitely play the deck, but the effect that it had, the gravity of it dropped off once it got pointed, which is what should have happened. But I think the gravity for the Triumphs is still very much present and still will be present for a long time. But
definitely.
They're busted.
The Triumphs are very strong, and they're not going anywhere anytime soon.
And the Triumphs also, they also enable prismatic ending to an extent that would not have been doable had they not been present.
Yeah, that is a really good point, is that they make it a lot easier to just kind of splash one color. Maybe if your deck's playing a Deathrite Shaman, it's pretty easy to just throw in a Triumph in there to get the black or the green or whatever's your off color to activate it or something like that. They just make it really easy to fetch out that. And we actually have
splash. Oh, sorry. We actually have a player that is playing Abzan right now, and they put a Zagoth Triumph in their deck and fetch for it to get to cast Oko. Because they have that, Birds of Paradise, and Deathrite Shaman, as well as a copy of Watery Grave, I think.
Editor's note, it me. The full list has Birds of Paradise, Ignoble Hierarch, Deathrite Shaman, Lotus Cobra, Zagoth Triumph, and Watery Grave as all of my ways to make blue mana in my Abzan list, and it is splashing for exactly Oko. Sometimes it gets people.
But that just because it's so free to be able to fetch that on a turn where you're fetching tapped anyway. It's just like getting a tapped Overgrown Tomb. But you get to leave your Overgrown Tomb in your deck to fetch it out later if you don't have it by you, because a lot of people don't have access to original duels. And then B, you get that additional color for whatever you may need it for, if you're looking to cast that, or maybe a converged spell, if you want to cast Painful Truths for 4 or something, or Prismatic Ending for 4. It's just I think the Triumphs have had a huge effect on the format, and I think they keep showing their merit in ways that people don't really think about. So they're my number one. Okay, so our list, I think, had most of the same cards. A couple cards different, but 10 of my cards are from Modern Horizons 2, and that is a thing that should not be the case, but here we are.
Modern Horizons 2 was definitely a very big set for Highlander. A lot of really strong cards came out of it.
Yeah, I see. I want to think of the ones that I actually called out of Modern Horizons 2. I called Solitude. I called Ragavan and Prismatic Ending. Not that it was hard. I thought Voidwalker was fine. Ignoble Hierarch was huge.
Really high on
Sentinel, I think, was medium.
I'm pretty sure we did a set review of it, so if you want to go back and watch that, you can find out.
Maybe so.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that was 6 months ago, man. I vaguely remember me thinking Prismatic Ending was way much more of a deal than you, and that is reflected in these lists.
That's true.
But yeah. So, you want to talk about what you played this week?
Yeah. This week was not too hot. I didn't actually know if I was going to make it or not, So when I found out that I could, I had to throw together a deck real quick, and I was like, all right, I'm going to throw together Boros Prison. And I think I got the numbers a little bit off because I flooded a lot, and was probably on too few win conditions. All of my win conditions were planeswalkers, but I did not draw them. So my first match was against Chad on his Red Green Bond deck. And this was the matchup I was excited for. I was like looking forward to this matchup, and my deck did what it was supposed to. I got a humility out in our first game, and like I just bought me so much time, but I just couldn't. I just kept drawing lands or like signets or something like that, and I could not draw anything. And then finally he landed a 4-mana Chandra, and just kept plussing it until I died, and I couldn't draw any win conditions. And then game 2, I got down a humility again and an ensnaring bridge with no cards in hand forever, and I was like, all right, all I have to do is draw a win condition. I probably had like 10 turns to draw a win condition and didn't, and he had a Wrenn and 6, and he was able to keep plussing the Wrenn and 6 until he could start, until he ulted it, and then he had, I think, a Chain Lightning in there, and that ended up killing me. So I was a little disappointed, but I was like, all right, I just had some bad draws. We'll see how the next match goes. So then I was against Ty on medium red, and it was largely the same deal. I got pretty close to winning one of the games. I had an ensnaring bridge, so he couldn't attack, and then I had a Gideon of the Trials, but he landed 4-mana Chandra, and while you can negate the damage from the plus, once he ultimates it, there's nothing you can really do. So I lost that game, and then I don't actually even remember what happened in the next game. I think I just died pretty quickly. Actually, I think I picked up a game in there. I think I was able to lock him out and get 6-mana Chandra, but then in the third game, I think he got there. So I ended up going 0-2 drop and headed home for the night. So that was not my best week.
So that was actually that was last week, right?
Yes.
Because this week we're actually currently recording on the time where we would be playing Highlander, but weather is bad here in Cincinnati, so we are not.
Yeah, there's a big ice storm.
Not
so
there today.
No one's really driving anywhere.
They shouldn't be anyhow. Goodness. So on Thursday last week, I deck swapped with Seth. I played Green Black Rock and did poorly. I picked up one match, I think, but from there on it was downhill. I think I ended up 2-2 actually, but no, actually I think I ended up heading home because
I think you dropped when I did.
Okay, so yeah, I think we both went. So I think I went 1-1 drop because I was just tired. I definitely could have kept playing, but I don't know. I'm pretty sure I didn't get too much sleep the previous night, so I just wasn't feeling it. But this week I played. Oh goodness! Oh, I played 4-Color Blood, which is like Abzan, Jund, Mardu, Naya. And it is what it is.
I mean, you could just say 4-color, no blue, but that works too.
No, it's Abzan, Jund, Mardu, Naya. And I didn't really intend for this to be the build, but I ended up on a more aggressive build. I have 7 1-drop mana dorks in the list. So it's basically very much a ramp to the 3-drop kind of deck. Like you want to play a 3-drop on turn 2 almost every game if you can. And my deck had 11 4-drops in it. But I pretty much I ended up 2-2, but I lost to Blood Moon decks, unsurprisingly. But I ended up doing a pretty good job of getting some really aggressive kills really quickly. I at one point went Birds of Paradise on 1, Lelia on 2, and Saskia Unyielded. Is that what it's called? Saskia?
I think it's Saskia, yeah.
Is that right? Yeah, the Saskia from the Commander deck on 4, and then just killed my opponent that turn. Well, actually, it would have been the next turn, but they just brainstorm locked themselves, so, you know. But yeah, I think I lost round 1 to Blue Moon, and then I won rounds 2 and 3, and then I lost round 4 to Medium Red. I lost to tie in Medium Red, as is our legacy.
Yeah, Medium Red, it just kills you.
Really do. And Ty is a very good player.
Yes.
On that deck.
He
very much
has
so.
played a lot of medium red.
Is he listening to this? We can't hear him complimenting him. I'm just kidding. Okay. Unless you have anything else to say, I think we're kind of wrapping up here.
Yeah. I hope you guys enjoyed our breakdown of some of the best cards since the beginning of 2020. And we'll see you next time.
See ya.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the 10 Points Podcast, and don't forget to count your points.